Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Holly if you're new, and today we're talking about the 100-mile race. Something very near and dear to my heart, and as a finisher of 200 milers, I want to share with you today my big list of everything I did to prepare for the race, execute through the race, and actually cross that finish line twice. Let's get right into it. So it was this time of year, 5 years ago exactly, that I signed up for my first 100, and I remember the feeling so well. Hitting sign up, paying the money, it's on the calendar, and then thinking, now what? So many places to start from. It feels quite overwhelming to figure out how am I gonna train for this thing, how am I gonna get my mind right, and how am I gonna stay excited all the way up to the start and of course get through that finish line. So I do wanna start the video by reminding you, take what works from this video and leave what doesn't. I think my first misconception was that there were people who finished because they did it a certain way and people who did not finish because they didn't follow one of those ways that worked, if that makes sense. It is quite different than that. You can compile all different things to make a unique training plan, a unique mindset and way to go through this day to day, month to month to keep you in this all the way through the end. So many ways to skin a cat, and this video will hopefully highlight that. You might even notice that my volume of training looks a lot lower than some other people's. I am happy to say I did finish twice, and I don't think it was a fluke. I really only signed up for the second one to test to see if the first one was total beginner's luck. Luckily, I was able to prove to myself, no, I think I do have a system for this. So in this video, I'm giving you a big list and we're just gonna kind of break down different categories. I'm not gonna make it super organized, but it's everything that I really feel passionately about that I think got me to the finish of both. So let's jump right in. So the first thing I did that really helped me was I gave more weight and value to every single physical activity I was doing throughout a day. Very similar to Weight Watchers where you have different points allotted to different foods and you can kind of combine to hit your goals. I did this with my training because I'm not a professional runner, so I'm not getting up and only training for the race, right? I have work, I have life, I have a lot of time on my feet. That's not necessarily a big long run or a big strength workout, but it is time on my feet and it is exertion through my body. So that's what I did first, and it really helped me stay in a good mindset of feeling productive towards my goal all the time. So let me give you a specific example from when I was actually in the middle of training. I had to move, and I was doing a whole day of packing boxes, moving things, I was sweating, I was aggravated, my body didn't feel good. Instead of saying, oh, I didn't have time to train today, so I was doing that instead of running, I count all of that towards my training. Quite honestly, how I felt that day is very similar to how I'll feel on the race as well. I'm on my feet, I'm using my body, like I said, I'm in uncomfortable positions. That all counts. Now back to the Weight Watchers example, maybe it's not as many points as a solid long run would be, but it counts toward it. And that always helped keep me on track, knowing I'm always going forward and never stopping myself, stunting the progress. If there's a week where I got sick and I couldn't get a long run in, but I had to go run a bunch of errands, I counted all those errands, feeling as shitty as I was feeling, but still on my feet towards my training. I'm pushing through, I'm using my body, I'm getting through it. That all counts. Again, not as much maybe as a specific workout, but it does all count towards it. And you add enough of those little days up sprinkled in between your actual training, it all really lays a nice foundation for you to get through that finish line. Next thing I did was really plan for and prioritize my rest days. It's very easy to kind of just not think about the rest day and see it as a free day, sweet, foot goes off the gas pedal, let's see what happens today, world's our oyster. What happens in a lot of cases is if it's your Sunday or your Saturday, you end up doing a bunch of stuff around the house or going out with people and you're on your feet and you're really not actually resting, such that when you get to the next week of training, you don't really feel like you had that time off your body. So what I did is I really planned for it almost more than I did some of my training. Everybody in the house knew I was sleeping in to the best of my abilities. I really leaned into my appetite that day. If I was more hungry or kind of beat down from the week, I listened to exactly what I wanted to eat. I don't like how I feel on junk food, so it's not like I was like, sweet, I can eat whatever I want just because. I still ate good food that filled me up, but I leaned into that. If I was more hungry, I would eat. If I was less hungry, I wouldn't. Try to prioritize getting body work done. If I could get a massage in, even something small like going to the foot spa that's cheaper, something to help enhance my rest experience and my recovery. Really, really making those days count, because then when you get to the next week of training, you feel like you got something from that day. If you don't plan for it, it always piles up. And back to my first point, all that stuff really does still add up on your body and it doesn't really feel like you recovered. So that's really important. The next thing I did that really helped so much was a ton of workouts on dead legs. When my legs feel stiff, crampy, heavy, really like they don't want to take another step forward, that's when I go to the gym and I lift, or that's when I go outside and I run far. And those moments really, really train you to see how your mind's gonna go when you're tired in the middle of your race. There's no other way to feel that unless you really get good at knowing yourself in those moments. So when things felt awful, that's when I would go do something hard. Now, it wasn't all the time, but I used that a lot to train myself to really get good at knowing what would happen on race day and not leave it to chance. At the end of this video, I will also give you guys a little mock week of my training, kind of show you how it's broken up. And you'll notice my run volume is actually quite low compared to a lot of people. I attribute a lot of that to the fact that my daily life is so active. So kind of those lower points, going back to that Weight Watchers comparison, those lower point items really lay the foundation for everything. And so when I go do most of my running, I'm already tired and sore. So I really value each time I'm running and pay attention to the fact that I can still gain out of this moment, especially preparing for something this long. One quick story I wanted to share with you guys. My first 100, I was still living in San Francisco for like the first 4 or 5 months of training. So I would go to the Lion Street steps a lot. And if you're familiar, these stairs are famous for a reason. Very steep, very long, amazing view at the top, but they're really intense as a workout. Typical workout for someone would be maybe 2 or 3 times from bottom to top. And that would usually for a lot of people be hiking them, and you would still be absolutely huffing and puffing. One time I actually got stopped by a firefighter who was running them, and he asked if I was okay because I was breathing so loud. Anyway, when I was preparing for the 100, I one day decided I'm gonna go over to these steps and I'm gonna do 20 rounds from bottom to top. I was thinking it would take probably 3 hours. I think it took somewhere around then, 3.5. So I was like, I'm gonna do 20 rounds from the bottom to the top. And I had this metal coffee mug down at the bottom of the stairs so that I could kind of recharge between rounds. And I was running these from bottom to top. So I get through everything. I mean, stairs are probably the most perfect example of working through soreness because there is no getting around how tough it feels, especially on a steep set of stairs. Your legs are burning so bad, but you have to pick your foot up to keep going. So anyway, I'm on round 19, coming back down. I'm like, all right, sweet, we got one last one, this is it. I grabbed my coffee mug because I was finishing and parked up at the top, so I was gonna have to just bring it with me all the way up. I am not kidding, probably 3 steps away from the very top. This is the end of 20 rounds of these steps. And I tripped, could not pick my foot up. I was actually totally capped at my energy, everything I had in me. And I tripped and this metal mug caught my fall. Otherwise I would have probably split my head open. I mean, it was crazy. I was just so past exhausted. It was truly tapping out at the end. Anyway, I caught my fall, which is great. I still have the mug because I just think it's a great story, but really testing it. Obviously not all your workouts should look like that, but I already was tired and sore that morning and I went and did it anyway. And that moment alone carried me through so many different points of both races. The next thing that really helped is I planned times throughout the year where I was gonna run in uncomfortable conditions. Lots of rain, hail, high heat, very low temperatures, humidity, putting myself in situations where I would have to problem solve and figure out what I was gonna do throughout. And I find this to be really good mirror for the situation in the 100 miler, because even if you're not running your 100 miler in somewhere where it's gonna be really cold or hot or whatever, you're gonna be going for so long that you're gonna be very uncomfortable several different times throughout. So the more you practice how you problem solve when you just don't feel at 100%, the better off you're gonna be. So I would pick races that I knew were just gonna suck. In the example of my last 100 miler, I did a 50 miler in Kansas in April. I had all kinds of storms happening through the whole thing. It was brutal. High winds, hail, rain, all that stuff. So not only was I having to run the 50 miles, I was also having to talk to myself through the just horrible conditions going on around me, just making it worse and worse. But how do I zone in and think about the end goal, putting one foot in front of the other and doing what I need to do with my gear, etc. That really leads you to a very strong, confident place for the 100. The next thing I did to help was I got very comfortable running in the middle of the night. Even if you have a job that takes you through the middle of the night, you have 12, 24-hour shift, it's very unlikely that you're running in the middle of the night. So when you are in that 100 miler and you have to produce that effort, that output, and you have no sleep under your belt, and you still have to be making your body work, you have to eat and drink to continue going, you really need to know how that's all gonna sit and feel for you. I am someone that usually doesn't feel too affected by stomach issues and things like that. And when I did the 4x4x48 David Goggins challenge, which I'm gonna talk about in a second, I learned a lot about myself. I actually realized I do have stomach issues when it's the middle of the night and I'm off my normal sleep routine and I just don't feel like myself. It's a lot harder to put everything together to keep going. I recommend that challenge, by the way, because it's kind of an organized effort. Look it up if you haven't seen it. I have a couple videos on it. You have to run 4 miles every 4 hours for 2 days. So you run at every period of the day, basically. You're experiencing all times of day, you're on very little sleep, and you have to keep eating and drinking, obviously, to keep making it happen. So as soon as you're feeling rested from the one before, you then have to get up and go do it again. And it's just a good experience and really gets you comfortable running overnight. You could also sign up for an overnight race. That's another way to do it. But either way, you need to figure out how you respond to having to physically exert yourself in the middle of the night on basically no sleep. This next one is pretty standard across all training videos you're gonna see from anyone, but I picked a few big events or big training weekends throughout the year to get myself really in the mindset of doing something long. So if it was a big training weekend, what I would do is clear the calendar, put nothing else on there besides the training. I would do 25 or 20 miles on the first day, go home, rest, eat, literally do nothing, wake up the next morning and do another 20 or so. Paired together, you're getting a big weekend in, but it's broken up a little bit so you're not debilitated on Monday, but you've gotten a lot of volume in. I also really recommend signing up for a big race, if not a couple of them in the same year of your 100. You do not need to do, in my opinion, 100K in the same year you do 100 milers. I think 50 miles is plenty at least once, maybe 5 months, 4 months ahead of the race. But just making sure that you have a few big things on the calendar, at least a few big training block weekends, where you have that body going under a lot of volume. And you can decide, do I want this to be in an actual all-at-once experience like the 50 miler would be, or do I want to break it up in a weekend and then rest around that? I did all of that, and it really helped me really know my current ability to struggle. You know, as we change, even if you've experienced a 50-mile race, you know, years before, it's just different now. The closer you get to your race, you want to be current with your routine, your systems for all of that. I also made sure that the races I picked and the training blocks I did, those big weekends, involved a lot of hills and some questionable terrain for at least part of the run, or one of the runs if I was doing back-to-back. And that really helped me, again, work through some problems, not make it easy, not just get the miles in, but actually have to also work through some stuff that just made it all a bit more annoying, but I came out the other side stronger. A couple of logistical lifestyle things that really helped through the whole year leading up to the race. I stayed really diligent about taking my electrolytes. Every single day, whether I was training that day or not, I took electrolytes. I use Element, LMNT, they're little powder packets, and I can link them below. But whatever electrolytes work for you, be religious about them, because you are training so much, and also daily life is so active for a lot of us that we lose so many electrolytes. No matter what the weather is outside, how much you're sweating, you are losing them. So you really want to stay on top of replenishing those and not putting yourself into position to cramp or feel horrible during a workout for no reason. We have control over this, especially magnesium. A lot of people take it before bed. Really know what you're losing and replace those so that you're really not going up, down in between workouts. So that was big for me. Second thing is I really prioritized massage and body work of all kinds, normateching, doing things to enhance my recovery experience. I will say, because it's such a big goal to get through that 100-mile finish, have a real conversation with yourself budget-wise. Is there anything that you spend money on that you could reallocate to more frequent massages? If you have a good therapist, somebody recommends someone that really helps keep your body in tip-top shape. That made all the difference in both races. And I don't actually know how I would have felt without them, but it was important to me to prioritize those. If you can, every other month or more frequently, but that's a big one. I wanna hit gear very quickly. This is an important one, but I did a whole video on ultra gear, stuff that I use, and I'll link that for you guys right here. But it's very important through the year of training that you're experimenting with all types of stuff so that when you get to race day, you know exactly what works for you. You don't have to spend a ton of money on all this stuff by trying it out. You can borrow from friends, running groups in the area, but try out different packs, trekking poles, water bottles, of course nutrition, we know that's a whole category in its own, but testing things so that you really are your best self on that day because you've done the work. Obviously, we lose some runs along the way because things go wrong, and you know, I really hated that pack and it rubbed my shoulders and now I have blisters and you know, my feet didn't like those socks, whatever. But we have to learn by doing it, and there's really no one else that can do that job for us. So I highly recommend reading up on things, taking different ideas and playing with it until you really have a system that works as far as your year goes. All right, last thing before I get into the little mock week of training. Really important to pay attention to what inspires you and what drives you forward. Pay attention to what you're reading, what you're watching. All that stuff comes together to give you, again, your best mindset to proceed and get through every hurdle on race day. So find out good podcasts, good books, people that speak to you in a way that make you excited about what you're doing. And if anyone does not make you excited about it or makes you stressed, get that out of there. We don't need anything to add to your plate, add to your stress. So pay special attention. Also, don't feel over-consumed by information, right? We are in control of that. So if you're endlessly getting advice, you almost don't know how to make sense of it all. So just be selective with that and use what works and don't use what doesn't. Additionally, use life events or current stresses going on to fuel you, to make you feel stronger in the face of it all. I will say in both hundreds, not by my choice, I was going through pretty intense personal experiences both times. I do think that helped me finish in both races because I watched myself prevail day after day, not just in the training, but mentally. We all have things going on, and I actually think we can use that to our advantage. So be inspired and kind of curate your experience in being inspired. As promised, I'm gonna finish with a little breakdown of what my week of training would look like leading up to 100. And of course, different week to week, but this was pretty standard. Monday, I was always in the gym, for sure. That was one of my heavier lifting days. I would usually hit back squats, deadlifts, some plyometrics, box jumps, step-ups, things with heavy dumbbells next to me, really making myself get under that heavy load in the best form possible. I would usually do, if I was doing back squats, for example, maybe sets of 4 or 5, and I would do about 4 sets, building up to a nice heavy weight, but something I could sustain, not putting myself in jeopardy, but longer breaks between those sets so that I was really, really driving out of my legs, getting everything possible into every rep. I would add some plyometrics in there, some box jumps, step-ups, maybe some heavy kettlebell swings. Always had core work going on, usually at the end of one of those heavy sessions, but also sprinkled through the week. So do that in the gym. Tuesday, I would usually do a run. I would say it depended between hills or tempo, but I would do a shorter run. Fridays, I really liked them to be very spicy, not necessarily long, but intense and oftentimes interval style. So I really loved stairs. I did so many stairs on Fridays. That Lion Street step story was actually on a Friday, I still recall. But something that was just intense and kind of over and over again, that feeling of having to push through and do it anyway when I didn't want to. So just that annoying cycle of that. Sometimes I might get back in the gym for more of a HIIT style workout, but typically it was a run. It was just more in the hill variety. Saturday and Sunday always fluctuated. So one will be a full total rest day and one would be my long run. I would say more often than not, I would get the long run knocked out while my legs were tired from the spicy Friday workout so that I do it Saturday, be off totally on Sunday, hit the gym on Monday. So long runs I kind of already covered, but if I did a big training weekend and I wanted to do back-to-back days, obviously I might take Friday easier and then back-to-back, double-digit days, Saturday, Sunday. But typically I'd probably run anywhere from like 15 to 20, maybe a little over that. In my long run, I'd do that Saturday and then be totally off on Sunday. Like I said, total piece of shit. Lay around, sleep, get the massage, whatever it was, and then that would get me nice and fresh for Monday's lifting session. That was pretty standard, but I do wanna say, around all of that, remember I'm training clients and I'm on a lot of runs with clients as well, but they tend to be a little bit easier and a little bit more walk run for a lot of the beginners. So that's always underlying it, and some weeks are heavier than others. So it's hard to say what a typical one is, but what I just described was really the framework for kind of what I did week to week. As far as core work, throwing it in wherever I could, at least getting one Pilates class in, but also hitting a few planks in every single time I was in the gym helped me solidify that I had been working on my core and could support that running for a lot of time. Remember guys too, with the pack on your back, you do want to be supported by that core strength. You do tend to round over, your back hurts if you're not actively working on that. All right, clearly I could talk about this stuff forever, so I'm gonna leave you right here. That's enough for today. Remember to trust yourself, trust your instincts, compile what works for you and leave what doesn't. Don't over-research, overwhelm yourself. You've got this. I believe in you guys. Please keep me posted in the comments through your 100 training journey. Let me know what else I can answer, and I will see you guys very soon. Bye.